Hello and welcome to Anime Memories, and on this episode, I'm going to be talking about Clannad After Story. When I first saw the original Clannad, I couldn't really get into it. I liked it enough to watch to the end, but it didn't leave much of an impression on me. It was fairly easy to figure out which girl Tomoya would end up with, so that made it difficult for me to care about the other girls and their story arcs. So I'm not sure what compelled me to check out the sequel, but I'm so glad I did. Instead of being a harem that's cluttered with all these different love interests, it's a standard romance that focuses on a single relationship. And since I'm a romance fan, this appealed to me a lot more, and it quickly became one of my favourite anime. Before I move on though, there's going to be spoilers for the original Clannad. There's really no way of getting around it, so if you're looking to watch it in the near future, feel free to exit out of this video now. Tomoya and Nagisa are now a couple and are looking to make a smooth transition into their adult lives. This transition isn't as smooth as Tomoya would like, since he's unsure of what career path he wants to take. But regardless of what struggles he goes through, he always has Nagisa's support, and they go from being a couple to being more of a family. For something I remember being a real tearjerker, I was taken aback at how lighthearted and, quite frankly, dumb the first two episodes were. I was so confused. I wondered why they would start such a tragic show with what basically amounted to filler. It was enjoyable filler, sure, but it still seemed pointless. However, once I thought about it a bit more, its purpose became clear. You see, they didn't want to go full on with the drama right off the bat. They wanted to introduce it gradually. In the early episodes, there's a ton of comedy, however, they slowly start to phase it out as the drama takes over. While this may have caused it to be a bit slow in the beginning, I think it was necessary. The audience probably would have gotten burnt out if the tone was depressing all the way through, because it becomes painful. It brought me to all new emotional lows. But the anime wouldn't keep me there for long. It would always bring me back up with either a joke or a touching moment. In fact, it was very effective at making sure it never got too demoralizing. In the end, it left me with this sense of hope that no matter what hardships I might face, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Now, when it comes to dramatic anime, one thing that many people can't stand is melodrama. The definition of melodrama is a situation or series of events in which people have very strong or exaggerated emotions. And that certainly describes quite a few parts of this show. The characters give these extreme emotional reactions, and there were many scenes where everyone was bawling their eyes out. However, with some of the dark themes that are covered, I believe these extreme reactions are warranted. If I went through some of the things that these characters experience, I'm not 100% sure how I'd act, but it would almost definitely end with me having a nervous breakdown. Another thing worth mentioning is that Tomoya and Nagisa don't become the main focus until about halfway through. The first 10 episodes or so are centered around a few background characters, and each of them get their own story arc. I usually prefer anime that stick to one main plot, but this was an exception because the side stories were very engrossing, so it didn't matter too much that the leads were being pushed off to the side. And what made them even better is that they took these supporting characters that I didn't think much of and gave them multi-dimensional personalities. It was very impressive, actually. Man, it was great getting to watch this again. I got to re-experience all the things I loved. However, that also meant I had to re-experience the ending. I'm not usually an angry person. It takes a lot to get me riled up. But when I first saw the final episode, I was livid. I had no idea I could get that pissed off. I never really let go of that anger either. I never expressed myself. I just held on to it for all these years. So I thought this video was finally going to be my chance to vent. I was finally going to let out all this bottled up hate. But when watching it again, I was happy. It was so weird. I didn't have to let out the anger. It just kind of left me naturally and was replaced with joy. I was shocked at how my opinion did a complete 180. However, Even if I love the ending now, that doesn't mean I think it's flawless. They use the exact same ending as the visual novel, and being that the anime didn't have as much time to flesh it out, it comes off as poorly explained and rushed. Unless you've played the game or read up about it online, you won't understand what's happening or why it's happening. Despite that though, it's still a satisfying conclusion, and that's the main thing. In the visual department, everything is of a high quality, it looked very appealing, but the majority of the art is fairly unoriginal. All of the characters have this moe design, which is pretty common these days, and the settings like the school and the town didn't look any different from the hundreds of other anime that are set in schools and small towns. However, when the visuals really wanted to impress, they looked outstanding. Specifically, I loved how different colour schemes were used here. In a particularly dark scene, it goes with this minimalistic black and white style to give you this feeling of despair. Then during a heartfelt conversation between Tomoya and his grandmother, they use a sunset as a backdrop to create a somber atmosphere. The visuals were also quite impressive during the alternate universe story with the little girl and the robot. It looks mystical yet dangerous, like the world could just collapse in on itself at any moment. This is further enhanced by the animation, since the characters move in a way that is purposely sluggish and unnatural. It gives you the feeling that this isn't an ordinary place. It's completely different from the Earth we currently know. Now, I've mentioned before that I'm not the most analytical person out there. I always try my best, but my critiques usually end up being more shallow than I would like them to be. And when trying to write about this soundtrack, my flaws as a reviewer let me down, because the music here is excellent. It adds a ton of extra emotion to the show. It perfectly sets up the mood of each scene, and I just rattled off the exact same spiel I give for every drama I review. I can't do it justice because I couldn't find anything unique to say about it. So I guess I'll move on to something that I can criticise, the dub. I found most of the voices to be okay. I wouldn't necessarily call them good, but they were decent enough. However, a few of the performances were so dull and awkward that they sucked all the life out of whatever scene they were in. Many of the moments that I remember tearing up at had almost no impact on me this time around because the characters sounded lifeless. I normally wouldn't suggest one voice track over the other, since I think it often comes down to personal preference, but here, the sub is definitely superior. I cannot stress enough how much I recommend the Japanese version. Seriously, you'll have a much better experience watching it that way. Clannad After Story is very special. It moved me in a way that no other anime has. Going back through it for this review, it gave me a whole new appreciation for how well put together it is. I get that at this point most people have already seen it because it's not exactly a hidden gem, but just in case you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. It's one of my favourite dramas. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you have any feedback, please leave a comment, and if you like this video and want to see more, please subscribe as well. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.